is advised.
Hello and welcome to the Liam Scheff Show on UCY, TV, and Frequency Radio, and wherever finer shows are streamed. I'm going to be doing something I haven't done for years, which is to do a 2-hour show. Yes, the show is now 2 hours long. When I started doing radio, I did a 2-hour show. I can't remember the network that it was on, but it was immediately taken over by another, and then that one lasted for a while, and then I think that became something else. The first show I did had a name. I can't remember what it was. The second show, The Myths of Science. The second show I did was called The Investigation, and that's one that some people might remember. It was essentially where I did the formative, well, no, that's not true. I did some of the tertiary, really, research for that became official stories. I had done a lot of the research already, but I talked it through on the air, which is why it's just the way I like to do it. I like to talk it through, digest it, make it accessible, get the ideas so that they flow in a very natural, organic, earthy, practical way, and then I write. I don't like writing. I don't like writing down the stuff that's undigested and then giving it to you to try to figure out what I mean. I like doing the hard work. Official stories is very easy to read, but it's deceptively so. I mean, I did a lot of digesting. Now, I'm not saying that the book is poop, because that's a joke. Okay. I don't know. Producer Monkey in the house. Producer Monkey, do we have any? I haven't seen you for a while. You're looking all right. Do you have any letters this week? No? Okay. What? Oh, there's one? Oh, okay. Let me bring that up. There it is. Okay. Dear Liam. Oh, they know my name. That's a, yeah. How do you stay so fit, sexy, and smart? Well, what? Who's it? Oh, signed your mother. Oh, you bastard. She didn't write that, did she? You did. Yeah, that's what I thought. So you can write me at Facebook or at I have a contact page on my website. Just liamscheff.com and then I think /contact, and you can find a contact pane, and I get those. If I don't answer you, it's because you're a jackass. But you can write me with your actual letters. It's easy to interact with me on Facebook, and the NSA can watch us there too to make sure we don't do anything that we would regret, anything that we would have bad feelings about, like talking about freedom or liberty. Speaking about freedom and liberty, let's just do a news rundown. Okay, here we go to E&E News. This is the only really news channel that you need, besides TMZ, of course. Nuclear expert in Japan, that's Arnie Gunderson of the Fairwinds Institute. Plutonium is everywhere. It's everywhere after Fukushima reactors exploded. It's being redeposited in unanticipated locations. Black radioactive dust, just wherever you go, it's running right into the Pacific Ocean. Next story, official report, West Coast hit with 220 million atoms per liter. I don't know, is that the size of like the tip of your fingernail, but it's reasonable. It's a scary amount. Maybe they should say tip of your fingernail per liter of iodine-129 in rain after Fukushima, 15 million year half-life. And don't let the minuscule size of 220 million atoms, which isn't really that small, frankly, of 220 million atoms mystify you or make you feel calm. The reality is that you don't need many atoms of ionizing radiation to cook your goose. 15 million year half-life detected in aquifer that supplies drinking water to large numbers of people. It's transported rapidly. It was transported rapidly to Canada and the U.S. Elevated levels continued for many months. Well, that's radiation. Of course, we're not getting any radioactive material from Fukushima, and only a crazy person would think that we were. CBS TV, radiation leak getting worse at nuclear plant. That's Indian Point near New York City, within about 25 to 40 miles, depending on where you are talking about. I mean, if you're talking about the boroughs, you're about 25 miles, the city outside of Manhattan. Levels increase over 120 1,000%, almost 15 million picocuries, I think, if I'm reading that right, per liter. If I'm not reading that right, I apologize. Governor, who's the governor now? Who's the governor now? Oh, fuck. I don't know. Extremely disconcerting. Expert on scene, I don't think they know where it's coming from. Radioactive antimony now being detected. I read antimony. Didn't you? She was the daughter of Oedipus. No, antimony's something else. Mass death of species found around Fukushima nuclear plant. The Japanese government, they seem to have disappeared. Little or no reproductive success in these shellfish populations. It's evident biota around the power plant has been affected since the nuclear accident. Okay, but it won't affect anything else in the Pacific. Ha 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 ha. I just wanted to give you that little head up. I don't give you Fukushima news as much as I should. So I'm writing my new book. And the new book is me. It's The American Heretic. It's official stories too, sure. It's about the myths that power America. But, I've just had to accept something about myself. I tried to make it make sense to you guys for a long time. I really did. No, I don't have any solution to the Fukushima thing. I'm just trying to keep you updated because most of you people don't have the willpower to go click on the Fukushima news every day, which I do for you, thank you, which is why you love and adore me so. Did I get any letters, Producer Monkey? Oh, I did? Oh, hold on a second. Dear Liam. Oh, they knew my name. That was very... I was wondering how you became such a Hey, I'm not going to, signed your mother. God damn. It's the only one I got? Okay. I wanted to give you the Fukushima news because, sorry, break the fourth wall. I wanted to give you the Fukushima news because nobody ever does. Nobody ever does. Oh, the cranks come out. Arnie Gunderson is a shill. A shill for who? The anti-nuclear people. Oh, really? Who funds them? What? You think like Greenpeace is funding the anti-nuclear people to the tune of millions of dollars? Oh, come on, give me a break. The nuclear people are the U.S. government. They're the entire energy and military grid. They're the entire medical establishment. Why do you think we started putting radiation into people? We're like, well, we got to mill the stuff, so can we have a civilian use? Yeah. There was a whole program called Atoms for Peace. I got to read that to you. Maybe I'll look that up for the second half of the show. But there was a whole military program called Atoms for Peace, the Peaceful Atom. And the Peaceful Atom program decided that they were going to build harbors and make roads, inroads, and level mountains, and do all these civil engineering projects with nuclear bombs. Yeah, we'll just use 10 nuclear bombs. The residual radiation will just blow away. It won't be a problem. Hey, we did it in Japan. They're okay. So I'm writing a new book, and I realized, I want to take people on this journey, but I'm just. And it's not that I'm far out. I don't believe the Nibiru stuff. Flat Earth stuff is fucking ridiculous. There's a lot of stuff I don't believe because it just it contradicts what's perfectly evident with your eyes, your senses, and thousands of years of paying attention as a species. So, no, I don't, there's stuff I won't just buy into. I don't buy into the Judy Woods bullshit because there's nowhere to plug in a big enough energy weapon to make that stuff work. And don't tell me plasma is scalable, so that's your answer. Yes, plasma is scalable, but you have to power it. Scalable doesn't mean that you can plug in your Nintendo and shoot lightning out of it. No, you better start understanding what you mean by plasma. You can read the you can read the International Journal of Electric Engineers. You can read plasma physics all day long, and you'll see that you have to have a source for the stuff. So don't just say plasma is scalable, and that's how we got the World Trade Center down with Judy Woods' Voltron weapon. So I'm not just going to believe anything. But I was just trying to bring people along with my very common sense, brass tacks, very earthy, brick and mud approach to understanding the way that the world works. If it breaks the laws of physics, if it breaks the laws of known biology, and I'm not going to go with unknown biology, if it breaks the laws of electromagnetism, and there I'm opening a pretty big door, by the way. I'm not just saying, I'm not being one of those skeptics saying, you're using woo physics. Electromagnetism is real, and it has many effects that are different in plasma than standard Newtonian billiard ball physics. So we can do some interesting things there. I mean, you can really understand outer space with plasma. But here on Earth, we live in the biological world, which is also full of electrical charges. But, you know, I'm going to reject things that defy human psychology, which is what we call history. You know, history is human psychology rolled up. You know, thousands of years of human interaction and psychology rolled up for us to look at. And the present would be the past. And I'm really quoting Will Durant, you know, without quite meaning to. But the present would really be the past, the same set of options, the same set of characteristics, just unrolled in this moment. So we have the same panoply, the same gamut, what's the word you want to use? Same range, okay, of human characteristics to draw from. So I live in this world, and I have my own spiritual take. I think that underneath everything is a mystery. Beneath everything is the mystery. The great mystery, you can call it anything you want, but as soon as you name it and you get very specific, you lose it. Every religion in the world seems to know this, and it's the first thing they forget. The first thing is the mystery. Underneath everything is the mystery. The mystery doesn't become a God, and that erases the mystery. If you manifest some sort of God out of the mystery, like Iron Man or Spider-Man or Jesus or Abba or whatever whatever your gods are, Wham, Culture Club, whatever you worship that comes out of the mystery, sorry, breaking the fourth wall, isn't the mystery anymore. It's a manifested form of an unreality, frankly, of an internal or of an eternal place. So it's manifested, and therefore it's no longer eternal. It is limited. We live in a world with limits. That's why our stories have beginnings and middles and ends, because our attention spans do, because our own moments do, because we get tired of something. An old friend of mine wrote me, she said she went to some concert she's Indian, said she went to some concert for 19 hours and sat in a seat. I just wrote, oh, okay. But they have 19-hour marathon concerts in some places, you know, and you're ding, 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 you know, and you sort of get into a trance and you go away with it, and there you are. And probably 10 hours later you go, is this over yet? About halfway. Okay. Ding, 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 ding. That's just me teasing the sitar. I actually like Indian music. But I also like classical Chinese music, which is pretty cool stuff. You might not have heard it. It's very interesting. So out of the mystery comes this manifested reality, and that's what I always hold things to. And I always think that I can bring you along, you know, but then I get these total, and I curse on this show, so, oh yeah, adult, whatever you want to call that. This isn't for like 9-year-olds. So I get all these fucking science whores and cunts. All these science motherfuckers and assholes. I get all these science bastards. These jackasses who can't read the papers that they're defending. These motherfuckers who don't know the difference. Nothing against, well, you know, if you're married, then your wife is the mother of your children, so you're a motherfucker. But that's, all right, maybe I'll choose a different word. Dog-breathed snail sodomites. All these dog-breathed snail sodomites of the scientific community come out, and it's not all of them. Of course, most of them are too busy just trying to, you know, pay off their second mortgage because they still owe $250,000 on their $400,000 of student loans that they had to get to gargle the semen of the professors who instructed them in the ways of semen gargling at their very fine establishment and university. So they graduate from the University of Semen Gargling, and they walk out a bit able to tell you things about how HIV causes AIDS, or HPV shots are good for you, or how Big Bang really happened and dark matter is the next big thing that we have to, dark energy is the most important thing that we have to study because it's so mysterious. So that's them gargling semen, and most of them are too busy semen gargling to pay attention to what anybody says about them. I mean, it takes a lot of energy to not only pay a lot of student loans, but to keep gargling semen, especially old semen that your professor shot way down your throat years ago. So they got to keep that gargling going, and it's a lot of work. I always think that I can appeal to these people. Of course, it's a totally delusional thought on my part. I used to think I could appeal to them because I thought that somewhere inside was just this little dog of logic that would go, woof, woof, yeah, you're making some sense. And I go, hey, dog of logic. And they go, hey, Liam. And I'd say, you understand that Big Bang was invented by a priest, don't you? And like, oh, yeah, that should that should taint it a little bit. Maybe there's a bias in his. I heard myself say taint. I'm not just going to comment on it for you. Maybe that. Please. Maybe that should, feed us the idea that this is a little bit of a bias, that his stuff is tainted by the semen gargling that he did Big Bang was invented by a priest. So maybe we should just think this isn't exactly a science anymore. I mean, he's bringing his fanboyness for the Jesus novels to astronomy. And I don't know if we should allow that. I mean, maybe we should just sort of de facto say, a priori say, no priests allowed. I know, oh, it's racist. It's priestish. But I'd be okay with that. No priests allowed. You devoted yourself to the worship of a fictional superhero, an ancient Roman Jewish amalgam. So I don't know if I want you telling me how the world works. Well, that's what happened, though. And I thought I could appeal to this little dog of logic in people. Woof, woof, you're right. And then I could say, you see, there's no real proof for the Big Bang. I mean, you can't test it, right? I mean, to be a theory, it has to be testable, right? Woof, woof, yeah, that's right, says the dog of logic. You do have to be able to test it, woof, woof. And I say, well, can you test first there was nothing which exploded? Woof, woof, no, we can't. Okay, so what's your proof? Well, they say, okay, first, we don't have proof, but we have some data. Excuse me, I'm not going to edit that. It happened. We're all friends here. I have some, excuse me. I said, excuse me. We have some data. No, not from Star Trek. We have some data, well, maybe, that we think proves or verifies our first there was nothing which exploded priest model. And I say, but dog of logic, you can't actually test it, so how good is your data? Well, we'll get into that. And I thought I could appeal to these guys, but I was wrong, because they have so much semen in them that it's gone into their brains, and their brains have actually reformed. This is my hypothesis anyway. I'm actually accepting donations to run a study to see if scientists' brains are made of swimming semen from their professors because they gargled so much of it. I'm pretty sure that that's what their brains are made of at this point. Just swimming semen that are programmed with ideas like HIV tests are ethical because they come out positive for 100 things. That's not a problem. And HPV shots are really good for you even though they cripple and kill girls, and probably boys too. And vaccination is good for you, even though to inject any of the things on the vaccine ingredients list into an adult in a bank hostage situation would get you the death penalty. Oh yeah, that's right. Anything on the list of what's in a vaccine ingredients? Oh yeah, just put that in a syringe and then hold up a bank. Go ahead, tell them I sent you. And then when the judge, don't have a gun, just have the syringe full of polysorbate 80. Or thimerosal, or aluminum, or monosodium glutamate. And then when the judge sentences you to death for reckless endangerment of somebody's life or even murder, you can say, but it's in the vaccine, and he'll send you to jail for being a denier of science. I thought I could appeal to these semen brains by explaining to them and sort of appealing to their logic circuits in their positronics matrix or whatever they're using for a brain. But I was wrong. You can't appeal to them. It reminds me of this story. This is a bit of an aside, but I was reading, there's this guy, Joseph, I'm not going to remember it. Joseph Atwill, right. So Joseph Atwill is an independent researcher. In other words, he doesn't have a semen brain. And he wrote a book called Caesar's Messiah. And it's interesting. And he's careful. And his basic assertion, and I'll do it on another show, but his basic assertion is that the Jesus story, which is clearly mythical, even if you believe there's an historical figure there at the root of it, what we get in the Bible, aka Jesus novels, is clearly not an eyewitness account of anything that happened. So we're not getting a person, we're getting a modeled political idea in the form of a character who's supposed to be the son of the old Jewish deity, which should make you sort of question why you're even considering the story as being relevant to your life, but people do. That's fine. I understand. It's a place of solace and niceness, and that's cool. And you can do that with Christianity. You can also, you can also do it without Christianity. You can do it with any entity. You can do it with any ism. You can find your place of solace, comfort, and niceness, because the mystery of the universe doesn't care what you call it. I think I should win a Nobel Prize for that sentence. I do. What? How did I hear you before you talked? I don't know either. But it reminds... I'm sorry, I dropped my copy of Siddhartha in Espanol. Maybe we'll read a little of that later. It reminds me a little of this argument that Joseph Atwill, who wrote a very good book and made a very good movie, Caesar's Messiah, and look, I don't know if I can. Maybe it's a little too nicely sewn up that it was all in the cards from the beginning, and maybe there was some historical happenstance that occurred, but most definitely the Roman Empire used the Gnostic Messianic Jewish movement against itself in any way that they could. I think the Jews were very helpful, and I think that the massive defeat after the fall of Jerusalem created a different psychological, let's say, weight for the Jews, so that they had to invent a nicer Messiah. But Atwill's thing is at least interesting. Well, he was contacted by a seaman brain named Richard Carrier, and I think Richard Carrier has made some good points, but he's really bitchy. He's just really, really bitchy. He's so bitchy. And he starts his lectures by saying that anybody who was a mythicist before him, a Jesus mythicist, don't listen to them. They're not academics. They're not peer-reviewed. But peer review is actually the ceremony by which they check the amount of semen in your head to see if you swallowed enough of your professor's semen to be allowed to be, out in the world representing the dicks that you had to suck when you were in university. That's why they used to call it seminary, by the way. Okay. Anyway, it just reminds me of these arguments because Richard Carrier makes some good points, and he's smart, but he just hates anybody who's not a semen head, and a semen brain, and I don't get it. The independents are always going to be ahead in one way or the other. They're always going to know things that the people ensconced in the universities don't know. And people in the universities from time to time are going to have some access to information that was hidden, that's really hard to get at, maybe in some old vault or library before the general public does. But in the age of the internet, everybody gets more or less the same information in a certain amount of time. So, but I was talking about semen heads, and I was talking about the sciences, and I thought that I could have an impact on them just by being logical. But what I didn't know was that after you swallow enough semen into your brain, after you're in university for long enough, and you swallow enough semen into your brain, and the semen begins to eat your brain, and it becomes your brain, kind of transmogrification, like the Holy Ghost, becomes your brain. At that point, you're a robot, as Professor Zoidberg would say. Sorry, Dr. Zoidberg. You've become a robot. So you don't know anything anymore, except the semen all have little voices and they sing in unison. Just for me, when your professor's on. And they all have little sort of mental tattoos inscribed them in their little DNA codings that say, Big Bang is the truth. If you don't believe it, you're a denier of science. That's the way they sound. And that's why a lot of scientists, when they speak, their voices are a little shrill, because the semen brains are talking, and then the scientists have to listen in their inner ear, and then they say it. So when a scientist talks, they'll sound like this. The Big Bang is a scientific fact, and math is true. Math is true, and they're listening. You see those ums and uhs, those stutters? They're listening to the semen singing in their head. That's how science works. That's how scientists' brains work. Academia works that way. It's a terrible thing. Academia is a terrible thing to do to a mind. What was that? A mind is a terrible thing to give to academia? Yeah. I mean, look, there's a good place for study, but everybody who ever did anything anywhere that had any merit was not from the university system. They were all what we now call eminent outsiders. We wouldn't even have the understanding of electromagnetism if it weren't for a bookbinder called Michael Faraday, who happened to be more experimentally curious. No, I don't mean he was bisexual. I mean he was experimentally curious with electricity. What's wrong with you? What? Projecting? No, I was just... Oh, shut up. Anyway, Michael Faraday, who you've never heard of, he was born a poor British lad in the part of London, and he came up, he was very interested in electromagnetism. He saw some stuff around it, and then he tried to become a lab assistant. And he never published a paper. He never wrote a theorem. He just kept doing and building the machines that worked. Amazing. And then I think a guy who followed him, James Clerk Maxwell, was a Scotsman that had to come along and write for his English friend. So, and Maxwell made some mistakes, but no worry, Maxwell Silverhammer sorted it all out. But Faraday was a really interesting guy. You know, he was a natural philosopher. And natural philosophers don't have semen brains. They don't have semen brains. They don't. It's an amazing thing. But they learn stuff on their own. They learn stuff by doing it, by observing. Which brings me to what I want to talk about in this remaining first hour of the show. We're going to come up to the break as this replays on some networks, like the great Truth Frequency Radio. We'll have a little break in a minute. For the rest of us, we're going to power on through the Big Bang universe filled with wormholes, white holes, white shadows, dark shadows. Excuse me. Oh my God. You know, I'll tell you what I'll tell you what I cooked, because that was really uncalled for. And the second half of the show, I'll tell you what I cooked. And I really need to jump up and down for a while to get it to digest, because I'm sitting doing the radio show. And I really shouldn't be. I mean, I should have... excuse me, is what I'm trying to say. I'm sorry, I won't do that again. Until I do. This is the Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV, Truth Frequency Radio, sometimes on Talk Network, and hopefully it'll be picked up on CBS Evening News soon, and they'll just run the whole thing instead of whoever's on there now. You can support this, if you're crazy enough, by going to my PayPal link on my website and on YouTube while it still exists before the great oil collapse of 2017. Putting in $5 to $20 or whatever you can afford, whatever the government isn't stealing from you. You can buy my book, Official Stories, which will detail the problem of the semen heads and the sciences. You can support me writing my new book. Please do, by buying my old book, or my old books. I have a couple. Official Stories is the one that talks about astronomy. The new book will also go into greater detail about astronomy and the semen-headedness of academia. Let's just pause for this little musical interlude. Oh, the places you'll go. You never know where this show is going to take you. I'm sure this show is unique in the world of dodgy internet radio shows. I'm sure this show covers topics that other shows don't cover in a unique way, in a way that most others don't do. Is that redundant to say unique and most others don't do? I think it is. I think that you should support this show if you enjoy, if you've been listening to for many years and wondering where I get my money. I don't have any money. I have to rob banks and steal pensions, or at least in my imagination, I have to do that. In reality, I have to do a day job. I work at Walmart. No, I don't, but it could happen. It could happen unless, and here's the pitch. You go to the PayPal button right there below this broadcast and click it and put in 5 or 10 or 7 or 17 or 11 or whatever you got in your pocket, 89 cents. Surprise me. And support this work. Well, I treat it lightly, but believe me, if I told you how much I read to be this insouciant, hopefully not incontinent, you wouldn't believe me. I can't believe how many articles sometimes I read in a day. It's never less than 10, and often it's up to, sometimes it's in the 50s and 60s. I've had 60 article days, and I mean real articles, and I felt the heat in my brain and the smoke coming out of my ears. So it takes real articles. I'm not talking about, global research whatever that says that Nibiru is coming back. I'm talking about real astronomy, real virology, real news, real Fukushima, real petrochemical stuff, real oil reports, real understandings of what Saudi Arabia is going to be doing when they hit their bottom. Jesus, God, that's scary. So I do the work, so in a way I can make it light for you, because that's just what I like to do. I mean, I don't want to come on all hot and heavy and say we're all going to die, although we are all going to die at some point. And Fukushima could be speeding that up for us. So make sure to love the ones that you love, and if there's nobody that you love, try to love the one that you're with. What I'm saying is send cash. This is the Liam Scheff Show on Truth Frequency Radio and UCY TV. In the second half of the show, I'm going to read to you something by a writer who goes by a pseudonym, Michael Goodspeed. I think he might have come out with his real name, but I don't want to. He's on the Thunderbolts website, and I don't want to give that away. So I want to talk about black holes. It's the realm of the semen heads. Yes, it's the semen-brained black hole theory. We'll be right back after this short musical interlude. Welcome back. We're in the second half hour of the first hour of the Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV, Truth Frequency Radio, and wherever finer cars are sold. We're talking about the problem in academia. The problem in academia is, of course, that the brains of academics who've been in school for too long become corrupted by the semen that they're swallowing from their professors, and the semen take over and really direct their thoughts. It's a scientific fact. I've had many conversations with deeply inseminated brained people, researchers, doctors, PhDs, other academics, and I can tell you that every once in a while, if you look closely at their eyes, you can see some of the brain semen swimming by. It's a fact. It's a scientific fact. One of the areas that I was surprised that had become infected by mind control, by semen swallowing from professors in PhD programs, was... Hold on. Thank you. Producer Monkey here, manning the board, or monkeying the board, I should say. Anyway, one of the areas that, I'd been through the AIDS thing. I don't think I'd really dug as far into the vaccine thing as No, I hadn't. And then I was coming through Chicago, and I was with Helen, my partner of many years, and I went to stop in to see this doctor researcher that I knew who used to fight the AIDS thing. And he was a crazy, brilliant guy. Crazy, but brilliant. Really brilliant. I won't say any more about it. But and we were talking about the problems of science, and I was understanding the religious aspect of AIDS, which is just old Leviticus, like get the homosexuals and get the Africans. That's really the underpinning of the AIDS thing. Just say that any problems they have come from sex. Well, we're okay with that. How about you? Okay. So the scientific community to the government shook hands and said, yes, it's the sex because they're gay. And that's just old Leviticus, which is old. It's the Torah, actually. And then it goes through the Talmud, and you have Numbers and Kings and all that kind of crap. And they keep writing the rules and the rules and the rules and the rules. And the rules are very important for the ancient Jews because they separate them from all the people who were surrounding them and, frankly, were more powerful than they were. So all the ancient Jews could do in the ancient world, we're talking 800s, 900s, 1000 BC, to the 600s, 500s, when they were taken to Babylon, or some of them were, was to create an identity that was sharply different, even though being very similar to the Canaanite, Palestinian, Babylonian, Egyptian influences and rulers that they had. So they came up with a set of rules, and the rules is a lot like the Code of Hammurabi, which it's modeled on. But a lot of ancient cultures had long codexes and of rules, long lists of rules. But the Jews' rules were different in a couple of ways. The Code of Hammurabi seemed to like the death penalty a little bit more for small things, but there were a lot of similarity. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, all that kind of stuff. But the Jews had a hang-up about sex. And the Jewish hang-up about sex extended to males having sex with males. In most of the ancient world, nobody really cared. In Rome, men having sex with men wasn't a big deal. If you were the receiving, anally receiving, then you were, I guess, gay. But everything else was, fine. The Greeks had very different philosophies on it from north to south. The Spartans probably had a different view in some ways, but it's hard to say, than the Athenians, who seemed to have a greater fondness for that and less of a fondness for women, at least in the public sphere. Anyway, there's all kinds of history that goes into that. But the Hebrews had this distinct, I don't know what to call it, a flavor? I don't like to use that word there, but the sensibility that said that, gays were bad. And of course all outsiders were bad. Well, all outsiders were bad to the ancient Jews because they were surrounded all the time. So they really had to demarcate who their people were, which is, I guess, maybe why paternity, Jewish identity came through the mother. If somebody from another tribe raped a Jewish woman, that kid was a Jew. But if a Jewish father was with somebody who was not a Jewish woman, that kid wasn't a Jew, which seems to be short-sighted, because Judaism loses about half of its people all the time. Because not all Jews marry in. In fact, I'd say most of them don't. But whatever the statistics are, even say it's a quarter. Maybe I'm wrong. Say a quarter of them don't. On any decade-long basis, then there's a constant attrition from Judaism. Judaism is a dying religion because of their system of calling people Jews or not Jews. All right, that's how the AIDS thing worked. Anyway, underneath every new science is an old religion, and the AIDS thing had this Leviticus thing, because the Jews hated homosexuals when gay guys were getting sick from putting benzene in their asses and taking handfuls of antibiotics in the 70s. The scientific community came along and remembered Leviticus. Yeah, you see, you didn't think I'd connect that, but I was there. Came along and I'll connect it to Big Bang. Hold on. Came along and connected Leviticus. Well, right there in that Old Testament, which is the Babylonian, which is a book of baloney that they wrote, by the way, in Babylonia. Babylonian baloney. They should have just called it that, the Bible, Babylonian baloney. So the Bible stories are highly Babylonian. I'm talking about the Old Testament. Highly Babylonian, until they get to the parts that are moderately, vaguely historical after the Babylonian period in the 500s. Vaguely historical with a lot of touch-ups and a lot of magic put in. You're getting these old Babylonian stories of the flood and the creation of the world and, whatever. All cultures have creation of the world stories. But the guys who grew up and went into astronomy had creation of the world stories too. And it was a guy who had a creation of the world story, who really adored that creation of the world story, who became our chief astronomer. And his name was Georges Lemaitre. He was a Roman Catholic priest. He was an abbé, a very high-ranking priest. I mean, serious devotion to this stuff. Now, he had an idea. And if you're wondering where this is going, we're going to the black holes. And we're coming from the sciences and how the sciences are corrupted by religion. So he had an idea. And by the way, all of this is in official stories. It's there. It's going to be in official stories too, but it's going to be different. It's going to be expanded and in some ways shorter, like just bite-sized pieces that you can just sort of throw in your mouth, like, I don't know, almonds, walnuts. I mean, almonds take a lot of water. Walnuts, I don't know. Whatever your nut of choice is. And of course, if you're a semen-brained academic, we know what your nut of choice is. We know. Just kidding. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's up to you. That's your thing. Do what you're going to do. I can't tell you who to sock it to. So there was a guy, and his name is Georges Lemaitre, and he was from Belgium. He was Belgique. And he very literally had an idea that the universe was créé par Dieu, parce que Dieu a créé un œuf cosmique qui, je ne sais pas, forme l'univers à cause d'expansion, something like that. Anyway, God laid a cosmic egg. Really, God laid a cosmic egg. And that primordial egg, maybe not an egg with a shell, but a primordial egg or a primordial atom, he wanted to marry his two hobbies. So he gives us this primordial atom, this primordial egg. And people around him say, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Einstein, who was wrong about almost everything, by the way, said, that's the worst physics I've heard. Other people of his time said, no. But what Lemaitre was doing was he was using one piece of data. No, not that data. I'm sorry, it does not compute. He was using one piece of data that was coming through telescopes to build his model world in which the Earth was the geocentric, was the center of the universe. No longer we were a geocentric solar system, like under Ptolemy, where we had this. You had to build a solar system according to the church that went around the Earth, and so all the planets had to do these crazy double spins and back spins and spins within spins within spins to mimic what occurred in the sky, because that's not the way the solar system is. We go around the sun. But the church didn't allow it. Well, Lemaitre's doubling down. He's like saying, no, it's not just the solar system. I mean, the whole universe. Because everything going away from us, right, we can see is shifted a little bit. It looks a little redder. And everything that's going more slowly is a little less red or a little more blue. And these are the colors that things were being coded slightly in these telescopes. So these guys strain their eyes and they look through the varieties of telescopes that they can to see if it's a little more to the red or a little less to the red, or a little more to the blue. And he says, well, that's proof. It's proof of what? You don't even know what red and blue mean. You don't know why things are red and blue. Oh, no. We know. It's because things that are further away, the wavelength of light is going to be more red. Oh. Couldn't it just be a slower emission of light? From an object that has nothing to do with how far away it is? Well, they didn't say that. Couldn't it just be the ultimate energy of, the intrinsic energy of the thing, the built-in energy of the thing, I mean, like if you have a little toy and it has a red light on it, and the red light goes on and off and on, like a X-Wing fighter. I used to have an X-Wing fighter, and it had a little red laser thing in the front. Of course, it wasn't a laser. And you pressed it, and it went, and the red light came on. That wasn't a million miles away versus a blue one. Well, nobody said maybe it's blue because the light waves are themselves more energetic, moving faster. Maybe it's red because the light waves themselves are slower. Maybe it's red for other reasons. Maybe it's built in. They call it intrinsic. Maybe it's built in, intrinsic, from trin, meaning Trinity, from the Matrix, of course. No, I mean, what would intrinsic be? Let's see. Sorry, okay, word derivation moment. Sorry, I can't help it. It's me. Intrinsic. Give me interior, 15th century general sense. Antérieur, inner French. Intrinsèque, from the Latin intrinsecus, from the earlier adverb intrinsecus, inwardly, inward. Trinsec. Looks like we're getting trinsec. So if you have sex with twins, I guess it's intrinsic. Anyway. Okay, I'll do more derivation on my own. Nobody said that. They said, oh, okay. And then there was a guy named Edwin Hubble. And he came along. He might have come along right before. And, he's noticing these things right after. Anyway, Lemaitre says, actually they overlapped with each other and there's a little controversy there. So Lemaitre says, Dieu a créé un œuf cosmique. It's an œuf. An œuf. What? Waiter, I want an egg. An œuf? No, an egg. An œuf. I just said I wanted an egg. He said there's a cosmic egg and everything came out of it. God, that's so stupid. But that's what people believe. Everything came out of the cosmic egg. Call it a primordial atom. Everything came out of the primordial atom. There were no laws of physics, of course. There was no physics at all. There was nothing. There was the primordial atom. Where did that come from? Dieu, God, Yahweh. This is old Babylonian myth dressed up in a mathematical skirt. So they decide that that's true. Not only is that true, but they decide that some things are still, moving outward. So the universe is expanding. Yeah, everything's expanding. So you have everything that's red is older because the light waves are longer, and everything that's blue is younger because it's closer to the explosion. Everything that's blue is further from the explosion. What explosion? There was no explosion. Did we see an explosion? No, we didn't. There's only an imaginary explosion, and you see red and you think that it means one thing, and you see less red and you think it means another. Immediately there were problems. That sort of, toddled along for a while, but some people thought it was utter balderdash. Sir Fred Hoyle thought it was balderdash. It was bullshit. And they looked and they said, your brains are full of semen. Stop it. Get your head out of the Bible. This is clearly a creation myth. But you know what is funny? The scientific establishment, all being good Jesuit schoolboys, who'd rejected, they'd rejected the absolute literalism of science, but of religion, of Christianity, but they hadn't rejected the feeling. No, that feeling just burns on and on and on and on in people. That feeling that we have to have a creation myth or we're not satisfied. What's the origin story? Hey, we're going to go see X-Men again. X-Men Apocalypse. This one, Brian Singer picks up a couple of... Brian Singer picks up a couple of Thai boys. No, that's not that movie. X-Men Apocalypse. It's one where the X-Men are challenged again, that they're all going to die, but they don't. Big surprise. But what's the backstory? What's the origin story? Hey, can we get a backstory? Everybody wants the backstory. Everybody wants the origin story. Everybody wants an origin story for the universe. We're not satisfied to think that it's an electric universe, an electric magnetic universe. No, we need an origin story. If we don't have an origin story, we're not satisfied. And if we're not satisfied, we're going to make up an origin story because, Mommy, tell me a story. Mommy, tell me a story. Well, once upon a time there was nothing and it exploded. Well, Hubble looked through and he said, okay, there's the red shift, there's the blue shift. They actually call it Hubble's law, that this is. But the fact is they do it without his permission, because even Hubble later said just because things are red and blue doesn't mean that this is an ultimate measurement. He said it doesn't mean the universe is expanding. You're seeing some red and some blue in these objects in space, these very large objects in space. Well, wouldn't you know it, a troublemaker came along, I'm going to say somewhere in the 60s, called Halton Arp, called Chip by his friends. Very nice guy, pleasant, easygoing, soft-spoken, honest, honorable as the only honorable Boy Scout in the pack. And he was looking through. He was Hubble's assistant, I believe, and he was looking through his telescope. I want to say it Palomar, but I might be getting that wrong. But anyway, he was looking at us through his big telescope, and he began to see these objects. They had to name these objects. Now, you'd expect in a Big Bang situation, if something's going to explode, that it all just flies out in 3 dimensions, and it's pretty even. And that's not what they were finding. They were finding clumps and like networks of things, big empty spaces, big cluster spaces. They were seeing things doing what they shouldn't have done but they didn't abandon the theory because it was important, because Georges Lemaitre was now God. We all forgot Georges Lemaitre's name, by the way, and they more or less credit Edwin Hubble, who doesn't really own the theory and kind of rejected it anyway. But we don't honor Georges Lemaitre because he was a priest, and because if you said in school Georges Lemaitre, a Roman Catholic priest, high-ranking priest, invented this, everybody would raise their hand and say, I thought we were Isn't this against the rules? Right? I'm sorry, I think we weren't supposed to mix religion and science. So they don't tell us that it's a priest. Well, Halt and Arp started looking through the telescope, and they're seeing all kinds of things that they can't explain. They're seeing objects that are emitting incredible bursts of radiation. They're emitting long streams, and I mean thousands of light years long. Trillions and 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 trillions of miles. Hundreds of trillions of miles long. Powerful. They look like lightning. They look like flashing lightning in a discotheque. There are these long streams, and then there are these nebula, which don't make sense if there was something that exploded, because they're, areas are too hot, or they're not hot enough, and nothing really is, to this equation that there was one thing that exploded, and how did the mass and the matter come anyway, and where was there anything to begin with, doesn't make any sense. They just ignore it, and they wave their magic calculators, and they say, we'll figure it out with math. They don't, but Halo exists on the Xbox, and that's not real. You can do a lot with math. And that's what astronomy has become. Well, Halt and Arp said, wait a second, all right, so they're these quasi-stellar objects. Are they stars? No. Are they galaxies? No, they're quasars. They're somewhere in between. And they're pulsars, things that are giving off huge volumes of radiation. And there are things we can't really identify. I mean, at this point, they've identified so much stuff in space that they don't have... They're vortexinal... They're electrical vortexes in space, like tornadoes that have been seen. The sun has defied all definition from the standard definition of being a hot ball of gas. It's not gas anymore. It's total plasma, which is... it's not gas that's hot. It's actually a fourth form, or maybe the first form of matter. It's matter that is able to conduct electricity. And it doesn't have to be hot to conduct electricity, by the way. But it is matter conducting electricity. And this is, kind of gaseous matter, but it's not a gas. It doesn't just, expand to fill a space. It actually follows its own rules. It has its own laws. Maybe that's why astronomers are prickly about getting involved with it. Even though they admit that plasma is everywhere, that the plasma is all over the place, they just can't stop themselves from talking about the hot gas. I mean, when gas is above a certain temperature threshold, it's all ionized. All the electrons are stripped from it, and it becomes a plasma. It begins conducting electricity, and then it glows, and then lightning happens throughout it, and then double layers form. The electromagnetic currents form sheaths. The sheaths form double layers. The double layers conduct energy in this direction and that direction. If the flow is strong enough, they may pinch down, which is something that electromagnetism does. It pinches down in a Bennett pinch or Z-pinch, and that will collect the energy at a node and begin scavenging material from around it and building an object like a gas giant or a sun. So all of this stuff is in outer space, but Big Bang theorists don't see it, because all they see is the null point, the cosmic egg that was laid by Georges Lemaitre, and that supposedly became everything. They need a beginning. Well, if you look at the universe as it is, you don't see any boundaries. Our telescopes don't see any boundaries. So why we think it's expanding or contracting doesn't really make any sense. Why we think it's going to contract after an expansion doesn't make any sense. We simply see it. And it is powerful, and there are new stars being born all the time. All the time. There are star forges. There are stars that fission and split into two. I don't mean fission in the nuclear power sense, I mean in the English sense, where they actually split in two. Why would a star split in two? Well, not in the star as a gravity clump, idea, but if a star is an electrical Z-pinch that has scavenged a lot of material and it's collecting current from the larger the solar system and the galactic circuit, it's overwhelmed, it can increase its surface area by splitting, and by increasing its surface area, it lessens the electric load on any particular body, therefore becoming more stable. So it surprises a lot of astronomers that most of the stars they see are actually binary stars. It doesn't make sense in the current solar model, which is I left a bunch of socks under my bed for long enough, and it became so big it just went into nuclear fusion, and gravity sucked it into a giant ball, which, even though it's exploding in giant nuclear explosions all the time, the weak gravity is holding it together. Space is electromagnetic, but you can't find that in NASA. You're not allowed to talk about that in NASA. So this guy Halton Arp comes along and he starts looking at these objects, quasars, galaxies, and he says, man, some of these galaxies are like tearing themselves apart. Some of these quasars they seem to be, exploding isn't the right word, they seem to have a trail of almost afterbirth. They're coming out of the central hub of some of these galaxies. No, that's not that. Everything was formed in the Big Bang. Galaxy's not going to give birth to anything. Quasars aren't. Well, it says, look, these quasars seem to be, in a kind of growth cycle, in an evolutionary state, and they may become more normalized. No. Everything came out of the Big Bang. This is nothing out here is alive. It's just all a big. It's all a big accident of numbers and happenstance and so on and so forth. And we know because Georges Lemaitre's semen head that he incorporated the Catholic Church's Hebrew dogma into our science, and that's true. Because Georges Lemaitre adopted the Hebrew fictions and believed them to the point of becoming a high-ranking priest in semen-brain gargling, we believe that to be true. So no, you can't. That can't be right. That can't be true. So just shut up. Not only that, but well, hold on a second, said Halton Arp. Wait a second. Not only that, but these things that are connected by those umbilical cords, like they have given birth, and these quasars right next to these galaxies right next to these galaxies, they're all in a cluster, and they all have different redshifts. In fact, they're startlingly different, orders of magnitude different, hundreds and thousands of times different. This doesn't. So your redshift argument that redshift means that something's on the outer ring because it blew up first, and the bluer is in the inner ring because it blew up last. These things are next to each other, but if Big Bang theory is right, then they shouldn't be, but they are, so Big Bang theory is wrong. No. Can you stop saying that, Mr. Halton Arp? Just stop saying that. Don't say that anymore. We'll take away your telescope time. We will. What do you mean you'll take away my telescope time? You'll go to your work and you won't have any time with the telescope. We can do that. What do you mean? I'm an astronomer. I was Edwin Hubble's assistant. I'm an awarded, lauded, decorated astronomer, renowned for my ability to discern objects in the great spatial ether. What do you mean you're going to take away my telescope time? All right, just stop saying that you see these things being connected. But I do see these things being... All right, you lost your telescope time. What do you mean I lost You lost your telescope time. You can no longer be an astronomer. True story. Halton Arp saw many connected, anomalous, so-called anomalous galaxies and quasars connected that, amateur astronomers can certainly see, but NASA always crops the photos. NASA doesn't like to look at these. They don't want anybody to see these, so they try to hide them from you. But you can see them. You can see them. You can even see them in the NASA photos if you look. But they do like to crop. They do like to crop, so you don't. Halt and Arp demonstrated that the little model that was put in place by the semen-gargling, semen-brained Hebrew Babylonian myth worshippers who have infected astronomy, that they're wrong. But like Galileo, do you really think that his parents had to fucking name? Couldn't they have named him like Fred Galileo, or like George Galileo? How about like Ron Galileo? Galileo. Fucking ridiculous. Anyway, he's the modern Galileo. Halton Arp is the modern Galileo, and he passed away last year, 2013, end of 2013. And you can watch now, his videos talking about this redshift controversy that's hardly controversial because it's just so fucking plain to your eyes and your senses, and what it means for these Bible-worshipping, Babylonian myth-worshipping so-called pseudoscientists who infest NASA, steal $18 billion of your money per year, by the way. I think that's their budget, about $18 billion a year. You can look it up. To create semen garglers like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Anyway, this is the Liam Scheff Show. We will be back in the second hour to talk about whatever's on my mind. I will look up some of the stuff that I talked about in the first hour. There was something I said. I'm going to try to remember what it was. You can support this show by going and buying my book. Please do it. It's on Amazon.com. Be right back into the short musical bit for a bit of self-promotion. You can stretch your legs. Well, that was a good first hour. Can you believe I actually have to do a second? I had cut this down to an hour and I just felt great about it. Just an hour. I enjoyed doing the radio thing, but just an hour a day. And now, too, real heavy lifting has to happen now. Now I have to go get articles and I have to read stuff to you. I got to talk about Big Bang in depth. I got to talk about black holes. Because the mainstream astronomical Hebrew-worshipping Babylonian myth cultists who infest modern astronomy weren't content to let Big Bang die where it should have in George Lemaitre's semen-infested head. No, they had to continue, and they did continue. They invented something to hold it all together. Not just one something, but many somethings to hold it all together. And we will talk about that on the second half of the show. Please support this show by buying my book on Amazon.com with my thanks. I think that you will enjoy it. If you don't, there's something wrong with you. There's something terribly, terribly wrong with you. There's something terribly wrong with you. Producer Monkey, where can they get my book? Amazonia? No, it's just called Amazon. Amazonia? It's just called Amazon. It's not Amazonia. They didn't change their name. You're high. Okay, it's on Amazon or maybe Amazonia.com. Anyway, it's called Official Stories. You can get the Kindle version for a song, a pittance, $4. 10 chapters, 11 topics, including the electric universe, plate tectonics, which seems to be another patent fiction of the. Maybe we'll do that on another show. I mean, that's just such a weird one. The Earth is shrinking, but it's expanding. The Earth is expanding, but it's shrinking at exactly the same rate of speed, but we can't quite tell you where. CIA, JFK, vaccination, 9/11, Shakespeare, Big Bang, etc., 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 etc. I might have left out a couple of there. That's on Amazon.com. The new book coming out. Please support the writing of the new book by putting a few dollars into the PayPal account. Right there beneath this show is the link. You can go to the YouTube page. It's there. You can go to my webpage, liamsheff.com. It's there. You can go to the Facebook page. It's there. Please be generous. It's Christmas. Christmas only comes once a year to honor our sainted Mithras. See you in a minute. And we're back on the Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV and Truth Frequency Radio, hour number 2. We can just let it go to pieces. I'm pressing my fingers into my eyes, pressing my thumb and side of my forefinger into my eyes, just pressing them against my eyelids, stretching the eye muscles, until I see all those weird patterns and colors, make the rods and cones go exciting. Why? Tension, headache. Time to try Tylenol PM. Or not. It's Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV, Truth Frequency Radio, and wherever fine talk shows are sold. We've been talking about, yeah. We've been talking about how scientists get to be so smart. And by smart, I mean semen-brained. But you have to go listen to the first hour. I won't ruin it for you in case you're just dropping in. Thanks for dropping by, by the way. Thanks for stopping by. You can support this show by buying my book, Official Stories, the new book coming out soonish. Yes, I am the heretic. I've admitted it. I live in Myth America, and I'm the American heretic, living here, looking at the landscape and saying, no, come on. You're breaking the mythometer. You're just tearing it apart. I mean, if I had a kind of little box that I could put stories into that would tell me if it was a myth or not, just about everything that we're taught in school makes it come up. Everything. It's just too much. So I'm focusing a little bit on astronomy. And the story of astronomy is complex. I told a little of it in the first hour. Now I want to jump into an article. It's by somebody else. This gives me a chance to read to you, which I know you love before you go to bed. Have that drink. Think about the one who got away. Whatever you do when you go to bed, I don't know. This is an article by Michael Goodspeed, When Astronomers Fall into a Black Hole. It's from thunderbolts.info. Thunderbolts has a great picture of the day to counter NASA's picture of the day. Usually done by a guy called Stephen Smith, who's, for having a name that sounds like it's just sort of from a Marvel Comics. I'm Stephen Smith, and I turn into the Amazing Lantern or something like that. He's just brilliant. You go to the Thunderbolts POD, picture of the day, and you will learn more by going through their 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of, portraits of outer space and what's happening out there. You talk about quasars, quasi-stellar objects, and pulsars, pulsing quasi-stellar objects, and nebulae, whether they're forming and sort of being ejected from galactic cores, which Halton Arp pointed out was possible, but we're not allowed to know about. You can see it, you can read about it, and you can understand it, something you can't do with Big Bang story. Let's just read this article by Michael Goodspeed. That's his pen name, I know, and I don't know if I'm at liberty to actually say his full name. He might have. It's just that it's not that he's a terribly famous person. He's just wanted to use a pen name, and he might have changed that. So, the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "The discovery of truth is prevented more effectively not by the false appearance things present, and which mislead into error, not directly by weakness of the reasoning powers, but by preconceived opinion, by prejudice. The most fundamental prejudice that has directed the space sciences for decades is the belief that, across cosmic distances, space is electrically inert, in other words, non-active. Throughout the space age, every new discovery has been interpreted through a lens that views gravity alone as the force that shapes the heavens. This model of the cosmos also underpins our view of the sun and our solar system. Ironically, as 20th century astronomers codified this perspective, the leading pioneers of plasma science were observing stupendous electrical forces in space and documenting the analogs in laboratory discharge phenomena. Now get that. Hold on a second. Just wait a second. I don't know if you caught that, but you can actually test this stuff in the lab, in active laboratory phenomena. You can't do that. You can't do that through systematic observation and experiment. You can't do that with Big Bang. You have to do computer modeling, and it looks like Halo. Pew, 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 pew. Hannes Alfvén, the father of modern plasma science, came to a viewpoint contrary to that of mainstream astronomy. His acceptance speech for the Nobel Prize, he warned astronomers that the study of plasma behavior requires attention to experimental plasma dynamics, But Alfvén's warning went unheeded, allowing the cosmos to become, in Alfvén's words, the playground of theoreticians who have never seen plasma in a laboratory. Many of them still believe in formula which we know from laboratory experiments to be wrong. In the 21st century, mainstream astronomy faces a crisis of revolutionary proportions. Pervasive electrical phenomena observed in space confound astronomers who have insufficient training in experimental plasma science and electrodynamics. In fact, with increasing and inevitable regularity, the language of the electrical theorists has entered the lexicon of mainstream astronomy, but in a manner that can only lead to greater confusion, both for the scientist and the general public. Now, remember in the first half I was talking about how their model is this gravity-only nightmare. So they can't understand plasma, and plasma is not a gas, it is not a liquid, it doesn't follow liquid dynamics, it doesn't follow the dynamics of a gas and to fill any space. Electrified plasma forms cellular structures, repels like from like, attracts opposite to opposite, forms what are called double layers, pinches down when the current is extreme and begins to scavenge material around it into a ball. Sounds like a sun, right? Gaseous sun, right. So let's go back to the article. What he's saying is that the language now in astronomy is trying to deal with what it's seeing without being able to talk about it. You know, it's like they're on a ban or something from being able to say this is plasma. So they say, oh, they're magnetic lines, and we send more money. We don't understand what we're doing. Oh, we're confounded by the results. Back to the article. The article again is by Michael Goodspeed. When astronomers fall into a black hole. No, that's not a Neil deGrasse Tyson joke. Come on, the Newtonian. Get over it. The Newtonian stop it. The Newtonian vision of the cosmic theater imagines isolated bodies turning gear-like in a vacuum. The electric universe envisions electric circuits embedded in a conducting medium whose components drive each other and may be in resonance. Wah, 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 wah. The difference between the two viewpoints is readily illustrated in a recent report from the New Scientist news service entitled Magnetic Cocoons Power Energetic Cosmic Rays. Magnetic cocoons. Don't you mean electromagnetic cocoons and electrical cosmic? Nope. The article discusses a theoretical, don't they mean fictional, solution for the mystery of ultra-high energy cosmic rays. Standard theory has never succeeded in explaining the rays, which are thought to originate from far beyond our galaxy, yet somehow make it all the way to Earth. Two scientists have proposed that the rays are powered by magnetized cocoons of plasma that were formed by jets of high-speed particles, supposedly emitted by a supermassive black hole. No, that's not it. Just stop it. The scientists suggest that over billions of years, billions and billions and billions, the magnetic fields inside these cocoons induce electrical fields. And these electric fields are strong enough to accelerate cosmic rays to ultra-high energies. Wait a second. You take billions of years and somehow there's a cocoon. Why is there a cocoon without... Why is there a magnetic cocoon without electricity? I mean, electricity and magnetism have to, right? Hand in hand? Don't go anywhere without each other? The astronomical community seems intrigued by the proposal. A Stanford University scientist quoted in the New Scientist piece referred to the theory, that's a generous word for it, as the least implausible explanation of ultra-high energy cosmic rays. A layman reading the New Scientist article faces the arduous task of distinguishing fact from theory, not really, fiction, since the author makes little or no attempt to do so. What, for example, are we to think of the author's suggestion that the rays might be produced near the Milky Way by the decay of super-heavy dark matter particles, or by defects in space-time? Since scientists don't know what dark matter is, and even many standard cosmologists now question its existence, because it doesn't exist, how can one meaningfully speculate on the existence of super-heavy dark matter? And what practical significance could there be to a defect in space-time, other than a neat plot twist to a Star Trek episode. Jim, I'm a doctor. Bones, bones. The author refers to black holes and dark matter as if they are facts rather than speculative hypotheses. He refers also to the Big Bang in a similar manner, even asserting that every cubic centimeter of space, it must be English, he said centimetre of space, contains about 400 relic photons from the Big Bang fireball. I saw that movie. It's Big Bang Fireball with Burt Reynolds, Jerry Lee Lewis. But when one examines the explanation for ultra-high energy cosmic rays offered by the two scientists cited in the piece, don't they mean fiction writers? Every link, I'm sorry, they are scientists, their brains are made of, every link in the chain of logic is based on assumptions that have no support in observation or experiment. Continuing, the first assumption is that black holes are real, and a black hole exists at the center of every galaxy. In fact, this assumption is so common that most science writers no longer bother to maintain any pretense of journalistic dispassion. They simply assert that black holes exist, and demand that the layman accept it as true. But no one has ever seen a black hole. It is a mathematical concept invented to account for phenomena at the hearts of galaxies that are too energetic in a universe dominated by the pitifully weak force of gravity. The idea that a nearly infinite compression of matter of a black hole can occur anywhere that they need it to has no experimental support whatsoever. Furthermore, the black hole story has an embarrassing to non-existent predictive record. It has been and continues to be tweaked, modified, and overhauled to account for unexpected observations. For example, in its original formation, magnetic fields had no role at all. But as astronomers with new instruments began to detect pervasive magnetic fields in space, the theorists were forced to redefine the envisioned black hole activity to account for them. All the while, they continue to ignore the electrical currents on which magnetic fields depend. The second assumption is that black holes, which we have had no valid reason yet to believe exist, emit jets of high-speed particles. Wait a tick! Since we were told for years that the gravitational force of black holes was too great for anything to escape, even light, this idea is particularly ironic. It is ironic, sir. It's a very ironic idea indeed, sir. Dab your eyes, sir, dab your eyes. In fact, galaxies have been seen emitting high-energy X-rays and stupendous filamentary jets across thousands of light years. A light year is some 6 or so trillion miles. What's 1,000 light years then? Requiring no small adjustment to black hole theory. Something that sucks, from which not even light can escape, can blow stuff gazillions of trillions of miles. Okay. Thanks, check. Thanks. I'm going to a different restaurant. In the case of the galaxy cluster Abel 400, a composite X-ray image revealed radio jets immersed in a vast cloud of multi-million degree, hold that thought, X-ray emitting gas, hold that thought, that pervades the cluster. Astronomers claimed that the jets emanated from two supermassive black holes that were provoking the merging of the two larger galaxies. But as was pointed out in Picture of the Day on thunderbolts.info, any substance with a temperature of multi-million degrees cannot possibly be a gas. It will be a completely ionized plasma. In other words, the electrons have all been stripped from the nuclear core. So the lighter electrons have been stripped, the outer electrons, and this thing is now highly, highly conductive, like lightning. The X-rays in such cases are almost exclusively synchrotron radiation, not thermal radiation. It's not radiation from heat. This is radiation from the stripping of electrons in an electrical circuit. That means that the X-rays are emitted by very fast electrons spiraling in a strong magnetic field. The Able 400 galaxies are under extreme electrical stress. Try Tylenol PM. To generate the observed levels of energy seen in Able 400, using nothing but the force of gravity, more matter would have to be squeezed into a galaxy than a galaxy could hold. But the theorists are mathematicians, and they work with equations, not with real objects. This permits them to ignore empirical limits on density and the amount of matter per unit volume without limit. In other words, they're violating atomic law. They're shoving material that normal atoms wouldn't be able to tolerate. They would repel each other. The neutron stars and black holes conjured through this mathematical license can be placed wherever needed to explain away the stunning and potentially embarrassing energy excesses. Again, you're listening to the Liam Scheff Show on Truth Frequency Radio and UCY TV. I'm reading from the article called When Astronomers Fall into a Black Hole with my added commentary. The article is originally by Michael Goodspeed of Thunderbolts, the Thunderbolts Project, which you can find at thunderbolts.info. Back to the article. The third assumption is that the jets of high-speed particles supposedly emitted by conjectured black holes can create magnetic cocoons. These giant magnetized cocoons of plasma decaying over billions of years finally produce electric fields strong enough to accelerate the cosmic rays. In other words, the thunderbolts, the trillions of light years long electron streams giving off synchrotron radiation, giving off high energy radiation. Here the scientists are repeatedly repeating precisely the error that Hannes Alfvén so adamantly warned them against later in his career. They are presuming that magnetic fields are frozen into neutral plasma with no contribution from electric currents. In other words, they're just there. They're not being actively powered. I'm sorry, shit doesn't work that way. Magnetic fields, Alfvén insisted, are only part of the story. The electrical currents that create magnetic fields must not be overlooked. And contemporary attempts to model space plasma in the absence of electric currents will set astronomy and astrophysics toward on a course toward crisis, he said. It isn't that cocoons do not exist, says Michael Goodspeed. It is, in fact, it was plasma cosmologists who have identified the structure and dynamic of vast cellular forms in space. Here we are, double layers, the shape of nebulas, the cocooning shape of the various nebulas that you see where there's an inner and an outer-looking sort of veil. They are Langmuir sheaths, named after Irving Langmuir, who gave space plasma its name based on its lifelike, plasma-like, like blood, qualities similar to those of blood plasma. Langmuir sheaths are seen at all scales of electrical activity in plasma. That is, they're in a tiny bit in the laboratory, scaled up 14 or 28 orders of magnitude to these, light-year-long things in outer space. They signify regions of different charge separated by a cellular boundary. That's a positive-negative repulsion like you get with a magnet. Across the walls of that sheath, an electric field exists. Sorry, condom joke. Putting your own across the wheels of that sheath, an electric field exists. Joke right here. This electric field cannot have been produced by some generator inside the sheath. Oh yeah. It must be due to larger regions of electric potential. However, these regions are to be explained. In other words, you don't have a little sheath that's self-powering. It's powered by the energy coursing into it, and the energy also pulses out of it. So it just doesn't self-power. I mean, it doesn't have a built-in, D-cell battery. The current is running into it, and they could measure that current. They could look for it. And they probably, they very often see the current running in and running out, and then they have to figure out why they're seeing it, and they blame black holes again. In an electric universe, continues Michael Goodspeed, galaxies are born from high-energy electrical events whose signatures can now be seen in space. Take a moment and consider the image above, and you'll have to go look at the article, of the radio galaxy 3C31. This galaxy is a minuscule object, little more than a dust mote, when seen against the immense display of highly energetic charged particles. But, again, this is a galaxy. Electrons in twin polar jets accelerated to near the speed of light are the witnesses to the most intense electrical discharge activity known to science. Our instruments detect this activity through its radiation and through the twin lobes of high-energy radio signals. In other words, electromagnetic sensors are able to detect it and piece together the picture. So how is this huge region of electrical activity to be interpreted? In standard models, an electrically neutral galaxy, because we're all supposed to be electrically neutral in Big Bangisms, is asked to generate electrical activity across volumes of space thousands of times greater than the volume of the galaxy itself. But simple electrodynamics says this is impossible. How does a galactic-sized neutral object produce a vast domain of electrical activity around it? A plasma cosmologist looking at this image will see electric currents incomparably larger than the galaxy being focused down by the plasma pinch. Remember, we were talking about the Z pinch, the Bennett pinch, at energy levels capable of lighting and organizing stars into the observed galactic structure. Now, if you got a little lost in there, understand again what he's saying is, you can see, again, take a moment and consider the image above radio galaxy 3C31. When you look at it against the display of energetically charged particles around it, it seems small. But you can understand that energy around it pinching down and actually powering and helping to form that galaxy. Okay, I hope that makes some sense. When electrical energy becomes abundant enough in a plasma, it doesn't, it streams, the streams bundle, the bundles bundle, and then they pinch. And in that pinch, pulling in what's called the Bennett pinch or a Z pinch starts happening, and starts scavenging even more and more and more and more material from around it. So the electrical model of the universe is looking at galaxies as having these very, very, very hot galactic centers full of electrical activity, because that's the center of the pinch. And then they're forming a plasmic shape around it. That barred horseshoe shape of galaxies is a repeating phenomena in plasma laboratory experiments. You can actually generate that shape with plasma in a laboratory, or by very, very carefully putting in the energetic properties of plasma into a computer, not anything artificial, just modeling it on the actual activity of plasma, and then taking a cross section of the shot across the horizons, taken cross section, and you see the shape of the galaxy. Or you can just look down the barrel of a plasma gun in a lab. The researchers cited in other words, you can replicate this stuff in the plasma universe, but you can't replicate it in the Big Bang universe. The researchers cited in the New Scientist piece do recognize an electrical effect behind the mysterious cosmic rays. But in order to achieve this theoretical effect, they require a chain of bizarre events, remember we're talking about billions of years of cocooning for no reason, that have no analog in nature as we know it. By the way, atoms don't do that. They don't just, unless they're being electrically charged, they don't form cocoons in space that begin to charge electrically. If you take away the electricity, none of this makes sense. If you put it in, it all makes sense. That's an aside. Okay, back to the article. We see in full display the crisis which Alphen had forewarned. Gravity-only space scientists have no choice but to call on weird, untestable, unproven mechanics to achieve the hard way, or in the words of one scientist, the least implausible way, what electricity does routinely, as demonstrated through decades of plasma experiments. The article concludes, from an electrical perspective, the ultra-high energy cosmic rays are not the result of a series of strange and unprovable events in deep space. They almost certainly originate in our own cosmic neighborhood, within the Milky Way, as a result of electrical discharge events well modeled in by plasma cosmologists. In other words, The rays do not need to travel across the universe, overcoming the impedance of particles along the way, what plasma scientists call Z-pinches, or Bennett pinches, in electric currents are nature's most efficient particle accelerators. Take that, CERN. A phenomenon dominating much of plasma and pulsed power research today. The production of relativistic speeds approaching the speed of light does not require anything more than an electrically active galaxy. Both the galactic core and other focal points of electric discharge activity, such as planetary nebulae, are the logical places to investigate as the source of high-energy cosmic rays. Good article, good article. Maybe a bit much for the newbie, but hopefully you hung in there. Hopefully my asides helped a little bit. Hopefully the first hour warmed you up. This is the Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV. We're talking about the myths of science, the myths of black holes. We're talking about being an American heretic, because there's so much to be heretical about. Nothing we're told is true, or should I ask the question, is anything we're taught even remotely true? If we had a little device called a mythometer, wouldn't it be going haywire all the time if we put it next to the television, listening to the news? Or if we put it next to Neil deGrasse Tyson's big mouth as he spewed crap about outer space that was total fiction? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it, though? Stay tuned to the second half hour, in which we'll bring things right down to earth. We're going to talk Chipotle. This is the Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV Truth Frequency Radio. Please support the show by buying a book. And we're just on a little break because everybody needs a break. You deserve a break today. I think that was a fast food slogan, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was too. I'm going to talk about it. I didn't eat at fast food restaurants for 1,000 years until this little place called Chipotle came along, and now I'm going to talk about that. The second half of the second hour of the More Than Second Liam Scheff Show. You can support the show by going to the PayPal link and putting in $5, $10, $20, whatever you can afford. Please do. Please help me get the fillings that I need for my teeth. Please help me keep my shoes soled with rubber soles. Please help me buy the plane tickets I need to go across the country and do permaculture. Please help me pay my rent a little bit, not all of it, just a little of it. Please help me buy the occasional non-GMO organic something or other by supporting the work that you hear here, that you really hear nowhere else. Not a lot of people are willing to go out on a limb and say that scientists' brains are a collection of semen from their professors. Not a lot of people are willing, but I am. That's just the kind of guy I am. See you in the second half of the show. And we're back. Will the fun ever start? What have we learned today so far? Well, we've learned that astronomers maybe don't know exactly what they're talking about. I mean, really, think about it. How can there be that many conundrums and conflicts if their model is correct? Probably not. I mean, let's be fair. Probably not. Probably there's more to it, and we're not seeing it because they're in the way. But that's not something most people get to think about. Because, coming in, Tim Cook's internal memo to all Apple employees on its fight against the FBI. Just a little news item. Yes, we're all spied on by Steve Jobs' grandchildren or whatever they are. We don't get to think very much because we live in a very noisy society. I mean, the world has always been a fairly noisy place, but, you know, you get out of the world a little bit, out of the machine world, out of the city, and, you know, the country's kind of quiet. It's pretty enjoyable. Nighttime could be noisy, you know, cicadas, or katydids, as we used to call them. Cicadas and crickets and grasshoppers and all the other things that make noise all night long, and little animals that howl and bark and yelp. The world is full of that kind of sound, so it's not like nature is deadly silent. It shouldn't be. That's a Fukushima kind of thing. But our noise is different. Our noise is somehow gotten very, very, very ugly. And I'm kind of being victimized by it. Why? Because I'm writing my new book, and I go to work at a coffee shop, and I end up stinking of coffee. So I get tired of working at coffee shops. Hold on, I gotta have a drink of water. Sorry, I should have done it in the break. Okay. Thanks for... Was that whiskey? My God, I think... No, it was water. I go to the coffee shop, and it's... I stink of coffee, you know, after I leave. And I don't even drink coffee. I drink tea. I don't drink coffee. I don't like it. I never have. It just makes me feel nuts. It makes me feel sick and nuts. I just don't like it. But I end up stinking of this stuff, which is somewhere between like cigarettes and bad breath. I mean, that's coffee smell once it absorbs into your clothing, and it just doesn't leave. And then the next day it's stale. Coffee shops never open their doors. I don't know why, but the people in there love to smell their own carbon dioxide coming out of their throats and their own methane coming out of their a-holes. They just love it. And they love to smell the stink of roasting coffee all day long, depriving everybody of oxygen, getting more and more lightheaded. So I don't go to coffee shops anymore. I used to try to write in coffee shops, but it's not possible. It's a drag. When I used to live in Seattle, I would go to the PCC, whatever that was called, something that I co-op. Wasn't really a co-op. And it was fun. I would, you know, it was great. The place was open to midnight. I would just sit there and write. They had a yerba mate thing, and I would pump that. Man, was I awake until 4 a.m. Don't drink yerba mate at 11. Really don't do that. You will not be asleep ever. That was cool. There was a coffee bean and tea leaf around the corner, and that stunk. And it stunk, and they never opened their windows. Everywhere I've gone that's a coffee shop ends up stinking. It stinks of the food they serve, which is always the worst kind of American food, like some sort of weird, greasy pastry bread made with too much butter that they put butter on, and then some ham, and then coffee, and then it stinks of it. Then they have a microwave and a toaster, and it's just hell. I don't like them. I don't like them at all. So I don't go to coffee shops. So where do I go? Well, it leaves very few places for me to go write. I wrote a book called The Truth About Love. I wrote a lot of it in a Panera. And it's not that their music's not loud. It is a little bit loud. But you can ask them to turn it down, and they will. And it also doesn't, well, here's an important point. It's not perfect, and it's not even great, but it doesn't suck angry baboon testicle asshole. That's what my experience going to this new place that I've been going for a while and like. I have a feeling that, I like this place, but now I've got to ground the conversation in some very earthiness, real world activities. Got to get away from the black holes. Got to get away from the electric suns. Got to get away from the electric universe. And I just want to go to Chipotle for a while. And you know what I want? I want them to change a couple of things. And I know they're not going to. But that's the way it is. BusinessInsider.com. Music in Chipotle restaurants, 2013. Nearly 1 million people listen to the music in Chipotle restaurants each day, but have never heard of the DJ, Chris Golub. I'm going to call him Gollum from now on. The founder of Studio Orca, a company that creates music playlists for hospitality and retail businesses. Chipotle is Studio Orca's largest client in terms of number of locations. And the Mexican fast casual chain is pretty proud of Groove Golub. Proud of the groove Golub, now 50 years old, creates. On its website, Chipotle boasts, we also work pretty hard to find the right music to play, because everybody knows the best parties live and die with the DJ. Really? I thought they lived and died with musicians, you heinous Lower East Side fucks. You heinous little white ghetto bullshit, mommy and daddy's trust fund spending a-holes. Sorry, did that all come out in one sentence? Fuck you and your DJs. Fuck you and your DJs. I'll continue for a second before I let it all out. The chain, which has more than 1,400 locations, that was 2 years ago, so it's many more now, has been working with Golub for 4 years. It's not his fault that that's his name, but it just, I hate him for it, for his musical taste, for 4 years to create its hip atmosphere. What our company does, what I like to call creating a musical identity, Golub said. We're sourcing out unique material that has freshness about it and a sense of place, if you will. If I will what? If you will, go fuck yourself. You're not sourcing anything. Golub, who called internet radio stations and employee iPods some of the worst decisions you could make for retail music sources, said there are days he'll listen to as many as 300 songs before finding a potential track for our client's playlist. You are a gaylord. You are a gaylord. I don't mean that you're gay, I mean you're a gay lord. I can't even... The team scours music blogs for new material, and Golub says he attends as many as 4 live shows a week in New York City to scout bands for new music. Environment is also a factor in choosing tunes, Golub said. His team considers a retailer's whole space down to the type of chairs and number of people it can hold. Really? Then why do every time I go into... playlist success isn't just measured by the number of heads bobbing. What, really? I never see any head... Clients see tangible impact from the music, Golub said. Including Golub. Why do they use last names in articles? Can't we just call him Douchey or whatever his first name was? I can't remember anymore. Douchey Golub? Chris. Why can't we call him Chris? Why are we in the habit of calling people their last names in articles? Why? His name's Chris. Why don't we call him Chris? He's a douchebag, but including Chris, Studio Orca has only 5 employees, one of whom is part-time. Who cares? Chris is picky about who he hires, meaning he also has to be picky about his clients. Really? You mean if they pay you? Chris was tight-lipped. He was tight-lipped when it came to discussing exactly where he scopes out music for his clients. How about the bottom of the toilet bowl in a dumpster? How about that? But the music itself is no secret. Studio Orca works hard to answer inquiries about the music he's playing in his client's stores. If a customer asks what songs he's playing, the client can forward the inquiry to Studio Orca's email and get an answer within 48 hours. How about this? It's total, utter, trendy, nihilistic, douchebag, heroin chic, fake punk rock, anus, but extruded bullshit. How about that? How about that? How about that? I think it's really cool. It's a really cool point, and one of the great things that our company does, Chrissy said. Dude, we're music fans. We want to make our clients really happy, and this is one of the ways that we go above and beyond. And for us, it's not even about above and beyond. And that's the way he talks, and that's the way he sounds, at least in my head. Okay, if I haven't made it clear, going to Chipotle is an excruciating experience at this point. I don't mind their food. It's not great. It's not bad. It's not even 100% organic. It's just not GMO, generally, except for the sugar in their sodas and some other ingredients on their menu, so it's not non-GMO. Panera, by the way, just made an exciting announcement that they're taking the additives out of their soups. Why did you have additives in your soups, you motherfucking heinous horse fucking bastards? Why would you do that? Why do you need preservatives why do you need to have chemical ingredients in soup? It's vegetables and salt and spices, you dimwits. Oh, and they're so proud. We want us to thank them. Thanks for taking the Monsanto carcinogens out of the soup. Go fuck yourselves. Anyway, Panera's... Yeah, whatever. Panera... I'm mad because I've eaten that stuff. And they didn't say, hey, you're getting the toxic stuff for free. They're Panera. We're all natural. Depending on the word natural and all means. I go now into Chipotle, and I walk out with... The music they play, if I haven't said it already, is nihilistic... douche hop, heroin chic, white ghetto boy bullshit. It's not music that anybody with any taste listens to. It's music for people who got into rock and roll when they were young and never got out of it, because they don't know that at a certain age, and take this point down if you're writing notes right now, you're supposed to get out of rock and roll. Or you're a dim-witted douchebag fucktard. Sorry if I said that out loud. You're supposed to get out of rock and roll, and if you don't, that's fine, but don't bring your shitty taste in music. All right, you can write the angry mails. Liam, I'm 50 years old and I love rock and roll. You're not a douchey fucktard. I apologize. But you know what? You're not... This is a public place, and I want to be able to have a conversation. So I wrote, I'm all right, I got a little intemperate, sorry. I have good taste in music, and good taste in music means I listen to things that make you not want to kill people or yourself or wonder why you're alive. That's right, I listen to music that doesn't just make you go, I wonder why I'm alive, man. Which is how I feel when I'm listening to the Chipotle track list for a while. Go ahead. I've said to people, I'm having a little trouble, I'm trying to go, I can't work, this thing is invading my head. So I wrote Chipotle, I wrote them twice. Again, their food is pretty good. It's consistently pretty good. That's what I said, pretty good. I didn't say great, I didn't say excellent, I didn't say execrable. I just said consistently pretty good. McDonald's is heinous Monsanto dog shit. Burger King is heinous Monsanto dog shit. Wendy's is heinous, slightly above dog shit. Monsanto dog shit. That's all. I mean, that's what you get. Arby's, Hardee's, all the rest of it. Heinous Monsanto dog shit. God help you if you eat it at 7-Eleven. But you know what? You can go into a McDonald's and it's quiet. You can, except for the sound of people beating their children, it's quiet. Except you can go. I mean, except for the, you can go into a Wendy's and it's relatively quiet. You can go into. I hate Subway sandwich shops. I hate them. They smell like hell. But you can go into one and it's kind of, unless they're blaring music in there now too. You can go into these places and they're kind of quiet. But not Chipotle. Why? Because you got to be. They're not a Mexican restaurant. No. They can't be like Baja Fresh, play Mexican music. Yeah, I'd be cool with that. You know what? It's just mariachi music. It doesn't bother me. It's not too loud. It's just mariachi music. It's ethnic. It's organic. It's played by people playing instruments. You know that what's played at Chipotle? Douchebags playing grungy, overdriven shit guitars doing the worst knockoffs to Rolling Stones and Cure songs. Now, I mean, I don't know why you have to do a knockoff to a Rolling Stones song that takes all the guts out of it, and I don't know why you have to do a knockoff to a Cure song that sounds, sorry, but faggier than the original. I mean, I'm good with faggy music, trust me, I'm a big David Bowie fan. All right, write your angry letters. Here, I'm allowed to just easy. I'm fine with it. Culture Club's one of my favorite. Okay. I'm fine with music that bends the gender a little bit, and that's not even what I mean by it. What I'm saying is that this is sort of, it's milk toasty, and I'm not really sure how I feel about things, and that's okay. I'm fine with that kind of stuff. It's a little faggy. It is. It's a little faggy. It just is. And I'm fine with it, but you don't have to redo it and make it even more limp-wristed, milk-toasty bullshit. But this whole generation of musicians, after the angry grunge explosion, which I blame totally on Ritalin, by the way, we can't play instruments anymore and all we can do is scream? Really? And that's a movement? Okay, after that came, I'm just gonna be depressed and overdrive my guitar. Then we had Radiohead. And all this generation of people listening to this stuff doesn't know the difference between a singer and a whiner. They don't know the difference between somebody who can play an instrument and somebody who can plug in an electrical device and hit it. They don't know the difference. And Chipotle is now the epitome of the generation that grew up listening to musical diarrhea, and now they're putting it into my ears when I eat the food that is, again, always pretty good. Offensive things I've said in this short segment: faggy. I've said music was faggy, and slightly limp-wristed. I believe I've called anybody. I believe I called a number of people. I called people of over a certain age fucktards with no taste who are only listening to rock and roll. I apologize for that one. The other one, I listen to, whatever. You listen to the kind of music you listen to. But I'm in a public place, and I want to have a conversation, and I want the conversation to be enjoyable. Write your angry letters here, Liam said faggy, and then he showed his breast. It's Nipplegate 2. I want the music to be enjoyable. I want my conversation to be enjoyable. You don't have to play the Carpenters, but maybe play a song that I know once in a while. But Chipotle wants to play deep cuts and B-sides of bands you never heard of that are really aggravating. You know what? Fuck you. Fuck you, Captain Chipotle and Captain Chris and all your douchey, anus-biting, faggy, horrifying, heroin chic music. It's not gutsy. It's not fun to listen to. It's too loud. I wrote them and I said, "Hey, I really love your restaurant. Your music's driving me a little crazy. It's too loud." They wrote back, "Oh, I'm sorry, music's too loud. It's supposed to be so loud that you have to raise your voice to have a conversation." That's the email I got back. I'll read it on the air next time. I actually got an email back saying, you're going to have to raise your voice to have a conversation. Fuck you. So now to go to Chipotle, what I have to do is put in my earphones and turn the music up that I'm listening to, or whatever I'm listening to, louder than I want to, so that I don't have to hear the diarrhea coming through the speakers. Now, if you think I'm alone in this, if you think I'm just I'm just being, I don't know, a nagging bitch, a queen bitch, if you just don't like my attitude, may I please read to you from mamafog.com. Chipotle is my favorite fast food, she writes. I guess it is not really fast food, but it is quick and I don't have to cook. R, that's her daughter, only likes chips, but she really likes them and would be happy to sit for a long time if the music were not so loud. I also have this fantasy of her eating beans or rice or even cheese. Why a fantasy? Because her daughter's autistic. I wrote an email to Chipotle and told them how much I liked their food, but that their music is too loud for my daughter with autism. I suggested that they have a sensory-friendly night once a month, like AMC, and turn down the music. Okay, now you can accuse me of being autistic. Fine. Let's read another here on TripAdvisor.com. This was my first trip to a Chipotle Mexican grill. We were curious to try it after seeing Steve Ellis on America's Next Great Restaurant. Blah, blah, blah. For me, unfortunately, Chipotle has a few big negatives when it comes to atmosphere and comfort. The music is simply too loud. This, combined with how loud people in line were speaking, because probably the music was so loud, made it ordering very difficult. The restaurant itself is 100% industrial in design. Lots of stainless steel and glass, which gives the whole place the acoustics of an oil drum with music blaring inside. So on and so forth. My wife and I asked an employee who happened to be the manager and was very courteous, by the way, and I've generally found, by the way, this is Liam saying this, I've generally found Chipotle people to be courteous, if all Chipotles looked like this and were this loud. He told me they were, and it's part of a sustainable design. In other words, it's cheaper to do them all the same, and this design reduces labor costs. Let's go to the article that I really harshly criticized from Music in Chipotle from Business Insider. I read you the article through clenched teeth. Got to go to a dentist, by the way. Love to know what this guy is paid, says the freelance, and in turn what he pays for the music he uses. Captain Gizmo writes, now I know who selects the crappy 80s style music that is. Greg McVie, I've never seen heads bobbing except dipping into the salsa. Or even heard the music at Chipotle. If it's so trendy and hip, they should turn it up a bit. Chris McVeigh says, I disagree. The first and last time I visited Chipotle, I remember the music was excellent. You, sir, a douchebag, PJ Brunette. But I won't pay $10 for a burrito that I can make at home. Why, I'm sure this man has great taste. I'm sure he's not. What matters more is what paying customers think. Here's my idea for an app that lets you vote on what's playing at your favorite cafe, and the band then gets 1% of the meal. All right, that's clever. John Nicholson, who I disagree and agree with, says Chipotle's music is great. No, it's not, but it's too loud. Correct. I love music, and at a party, loud is fine, but at mealtime, it is a bother. He's not autistic, and he loves the music. I think we're building a small consensus here. Very tough to calmly ingest your food when music is blaring. Someone, party knucklehead there, must think that overstimulation and hearing damage is good for digestion. For this reason, if I need to sit at a restaurant and eat, I skip Chipotle usually. Billy Boy says, I agree with you 100%. In fact, I have even written Chipotle saying that it is not only their music is too loud, but their cooking staff seems to derive an inordinate amount of satisfaction from banging and cleaning the pots and pans. They acknowledged my message, as they did with me, Liam, of course, but nothing's changed. So I just go for the food to sit in the car and eat it, whatever. Either there or go to Panera's. Do you mean Pantera? Where the atmosphere is more civilized. Mark Gallagher expresses my opinions. So this is the jerk who makes eating at Chipotle an unbearable experience. The music, if you want to call it that, is painfully loud and usually of some type of vile hip-hop or reggae. If anyone at Chipotle is reading this, please turn the music down. I wouldn't say that your food is a favorite in our house, but you do sell blah, blah, blah. He talks about. We hate your shitty music more than anything. Remember, most of your paying customers are not jerks like the DJ pictured above who think that constant blaring noise in your skull is the way to go about life. Some of us appreciate the peace and quiet, or at the very least, we appreciate it when someone doesn't force us to listen to high decibel garbage. Derp says, wow, I didn't know you could actually get paid for this. This guy isn't very good at it, considering the music you hear at Chipotle is the same music you were listening to 4 years ago when it was actually new. Renee says, first thing that came to my mind is, why is this newsworthy? Venom says, Chipotle should spend the money coming up with better menu and better tasting menu than that overpriced subpar generic garbage they sell. Chipotle is proof that people are idiot sheep. Find a Mexican, become friends, and let them get you some real food. Bill Crane sums it up by saying the music in Chipotle is always dreadful, and they pay this arrogant guy for it. We prefer to sit outside where it is pleasant, otherwise we just go elsewhere. Well, I'm just saying that something happened. Something happened in the world, and I think I know what it is. And if you think this is just a rant going nowhere, you're wrong. Just a faggy rant going faggy nowhere, you're wrong. It's going faggy somewhere. It's going faggy right here. When you watch movies about stuff that's happening to teenagers, teenage movies about life, guess what always happens? People are sitting in a cafe, coffee shop, a restaurant, and because the emotion of the scene is getting higher, we're supposed to feel their juvenile excitement, a rock and roll song blares. I can tell you that growing up that never happened in our lives. Things were quiet. There was music in the distance on a speaker playing something that was not offensive. It wasn't that trendy, it was just not offensive, so that we could quietly eat. Eating was a kind of sacred experience, that we would be quiet and let our digestion work. We weren't going there to be roughed up. We weren't going to some sort of sit-in or protest. It was a restaurant, and we were trying to fucking jest our meal, as bad as the meal was. We were trying to eat and digest and talk with each other and have a moment that was not about the arrogant, cunt-faced, whore-fuck DJ, excuse me, that all came out that way. I'm going to have to apologize for that to somebody. But it's not all about the arrogant prick DJ's taste. I could give a flying fuck about his taste. I want to eat in relative quiet with relatively unoffensive music that doesn't make me sick. Is that so much to ask? We're not in an 80s movie or a 90s movie. This isn't She's All That or She's Good at That or Where's the Party At, or this is not a Kid and Play. I watched 3 Kid and Play movies and liked 2 of them. But this is not a Kid and Play movie. I don't need music to be that loud when I'm at a place eating. But because we grew up watching stuff where music was blaring, people think that to have a good time, music has to be blaring. We've been influenced by the movies. It is not correct. Real life is the experience that you have with people, not with canned, synthetic, dreadful bullshit chosen by one ass clown. And if you like the ass clown's music, Gesundheit, God bless you, whatever. But you know what, Chipotle? Hire 3 more ass clowns with different tastes, because fuck you. This has been the Liam Scheff Show. Maybe the last one, I hope not. I got a little mouthy in the last few minutes, so a parental warning just has to go on this for some of the colorful language. This is stand-up comedy. This is the hurtful truth about the world. We're living in a world run by semen heads. Not that there's any, run by people who ingest other people's nonsense and think that it's gold. It's not gold, and it's time for us to stand up and take little spaces back. I want you to go into your local Too Loud place, whether it's Abercrombie and Fitch or Bitch or whatever that place is called, or your local Chipotle or whatever, Poo-Poo Shishi, and say, could you turn the fucking music down a little? I'm trying to talk to my friends. And fuck you for trying to force me into some weird 80s teenage movie, you assholes. And I'd like the Black Beans, please. See you next time. If you like what you heard, please buy a book. Please support this independent way of thinking, this independent philosophy, by going to the PayPal link, putting in 5, 10, 8, negative 100, whatever you can afford, dollars. Just leave the black holes out of it. They don't exist. See you next time.